Okay, welcome back everybody. If you could settle down, that'd be great. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch. But we've got a really dynamic session for you now, which I think personally personifies FTE, focusing on understanding the trends and factors that will impact customer journeys and future expansion strategies of airports and airlines, with a great mix of all the industry players that you would want to see discuss a topic like this. It'll be moderated once more by Nick Bartlett, who's a leading voice in strategic foresight and emerging trends and director of consulting at the Future Today Strategy Group, where he helps Fortune 500 companies and governments anticipate disruption and seize opportunity. He did a great job this morning. I'm looking forward to having him back again. Nick, over to you. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. So as was mentioned, great panel for you today. I'm really excited because this is, again, another area that we like to focus on, talking about future strategies and thinking about what the customer is going to need next. Hopefully for the next hour, I think we're going to do a really great job of kind of cutting through the noise and really talking about actual implementable strategies and things that folks are looking at longer term in terms of the coming years. Things ranging from walk-through screening, smarter connections, to data-rich aircraft, AI embedded across operations, as well as in the cockpit and on the ramps. I really think that these are all going to change not only how we plan for infrastructure, processes, but policy as well. So we're really at an inflection point for both airlines and airports that need to make long-term bets and need to start deciding where to place their capital and where to place their resources. And with the help of their partners, they're facing immense regulatory pressures, budget pressures, and of course, consumer expectations are changing on a daily basis. So I think what you'll hear today across perspectives from all these folks is a pretty clear through line that seamless end-to-end journeys for customers is only going to happen when we see the aircraft, airport, and authority share timely data and design for flexibility. So highlighting this is going to be our phenomenal panel. They present a variety of different perspectives and give us a full picture of the airline and airport ecosystem. Our architecture and engineering view is Yvonne Bilshausen, SVP of Global Head of Aviation and Architecture and Engineering at AECOM. Our technologist perspective is Sanskar Agrawal, Industry Business Development, Smart Spaces, and Global Public Sector at NVIDIA. Our aircraft manufacturing view is Paige Stanton, Chief Development Officer of Accubed. This is an Airbus Innovation Center. The regulatory trends perspective is Anne-Marie Pellerin, Managing Partner and Founder of Lamlaw Consulting, and CEO of Curie Technologies. Our airline perspective is Keith Walters, Group Transformation Lead at IAG. And our airport perspective is Jose Salmo, Associate Director of Planning and Development Technology Services at Greater Toronto Airports Authority, and FTE Digital Innovation and Startup Hub Captain. So I'm very excited to hear from this group. I really just want to jump in. They have far more to say that's far more interesting than me. We'll hear their perspectives, and then we're going to dig into some of the handoffs that really make the journey possible and look at where regulation, tech, and operations need to move in lockstep. So each of our panelists is going to dive in with about 5 minutes or so to give you their perspectives on the customer journey, and then we'll get going. So with that, we'll have Yvonne start.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Perfect. Ooh, thank you. That would help. Okay, we'll wing it here. Imagine arriving at an airport where from the moment you approach the terminal, the journey feels effortless. No long lines, no confusion, just seamless movement towards your destination. This vision has become a reality at Boston Logan Terminal E, designed by my incredible AECOM colleagues, Terry Rookard, Jonathan Rushmore, and their talented team of architects and engineers, along with our good friend, Luis Vidal. I'd like to thank them and our client for developing the stunning Boston Terminal E. The terminal is equipped with automated screen lanes, significantly improving the security screening checkpoint, reducing wait times and enhancing passenger flow. The terminal's design emphasizes intuitive wayfinding with clear signage and spacious concourses, ensuring smooth circulation for travelers. Natural light floods the interior through self-tinting windows, creating a bright and welcoming environment. As architects and engineers, our responsibility isn't to build for today, but to anticipate tomorrow. My teams across the US and globe design terminals and concourses that can evolve, adapt, and respond to guest needs before even they know what they are. Aircraft are changing the development game. Long-range narrow bodies are opening nonstop routes to cities once out of reach. That means more international gates, right-sized hold rooms, and a smarter balance between domestic and international processing. Our terminals must be flexible, ready to adapt to evolving fleets and route networks. Processing technology is transforming the way that we think and design space. Imagine walk-through security, no trays, no lines. Customs without bag stops. Queue zones shrink, freeing space for dwell, retail, or lounges. But technology doesn't just speed up passengers, it frees the terminal to become more engaging, more human-centered. But speed and efficiency are only part of the experience. The future of air travel is immersive and multisensory, with terminals that appeal to all 5 senses. Visual cues guide passengers intuitively. Natural light and dynamic lighting create comfort and orientation. Soundscapes reduce stress and provide subtle wayfinding. Tactile materials enhance the human touch, and even curated scents or ambient air quality elevate mood. By designing with the 5 senses in mind, we transform terminals from purely functional spaces into environments that can delight, calm, and guide travelers, making the journey itself as memorable as the destination. Passengers are digital, and their expectations reflect it. Phones guide them, track their bags, and provide live updates. Airports need a digital backbone of connectivity, integrated systems, and real-time data. The infrastructure supporting this digital experience is now as critical as baggage handling systems. Terminals must be designed to support both the physical and the digital journey. Resiliency and sustainability are non-negotiable. Environmental, social, and governance pressures, decarbonization, and demand uncertainty require modular, multi-use infrastructure curated by durable, adaptable design. Flexibility allows airports to respond to changing technology and human behavior whilst minimalizing environmental impact. The smartest designs balance operational agility with sustainable practice. From an architecture and engineering perspective, the key takeaway here is that the future of airports isn't about being the largest, it's about being the smartest. Designing for the convergence of efficiency, resiliency, security, sustainability, and the human experience is how we succeed. And as we get this right, airports won't just meet the future of air travel, they will shape it.
Thank you. Awesome. Sanskar, how about your perspective?
So hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. So my name is Sanskar Agarwal. I do business development for smart spaces and local government and NVIDIA. And in our business, we work closely with airports. So the aviation industry is growing at a rapid pace. Airlines are expected to surpass 5 billion annual travelers, and air travel traffic is expected to grow every year. So with the influx of passengers and FIFA 2026 coming to the United States, from a technology point of view, AI can solve a lot of different use cases. So airports can use AI for passenger management. So using AI, you can solve use cases such as people counting. So people counting will allow you to see how many people are in the airport. You can see, and then you can do stats like use cases for how long the TSA pre-lines are. So if certain TSA pre-lines are longer, you can use AI to send more personnel there to improve operational efficiency and passenger experience. So then the second use case that you can solve using AI is turnaround management. So you can use AI at the edge, so deploy an edge device on a tarmac to see when a plane's done fueling, when the airplane is done fueling, tarmac is removed, whether the food has come. So using these stats, you can see whether the plane's gonna go to the next destination in time. And if a plane gets delayed, you can go back through those stats and see how you can improve so you can make it sure that it goes to the next destination safer. And then the last use case is digital twins. So digital twins allow you to create virtual replicas of the airport infrastructure. So it allows users to visualize and monitor what's happening in the airports in real time. So using digital twins, you can improve operational efficiency, enhance safety, and meet sustainable needs. So for example, airports are a big area, so in a digital simulated environment, you can do like enhanced safety by doing evacuation plans. So say something emergency happens in an airport, how do you make sure that everybody can evacuate in time? And then airports also use a lot of energy, so in a simulated environment, you can see which areas are using the most energy, how you can improve those efficiencies as well. So that's my view from an NVIDIA point of view.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Paige, how about you?
Yeah, so nice to be here with all of you today. I think you all certainly know that Airbus is aircraft manufacturing giant, offering a complete range of products, global scale, manufacturing and design expertise, and a worldwide footprint. But what you may not know is that Airbus also has a worldwide approach to research and innovation and invests in its future in part through AECOM, which is Airbus's innovation center located in Silicon Valley. And that's been around for a little over 10 years. So you can just jump in a plane. We're about 15 minutes away up near San Jose. And AECOM, over the years, we've explored a lot of different spaces. And right now, obviously, what we're hearing is about AI. And so we've honed in on AI exploration. And our focus is on how to accelerate adoption of AI in the industry. And obviously, we do that at AECOM by leveraging the ecosystem, so it's rife with the technologies that are coming out, also talent, there's startups and researchers. And so we leverage that to accelerate ideas and turn them into valuable innovations. And I would say over the last 2-3 years with the advent of AI, we really see that it makes a lot of sense for OEMs and us being a manufacturer of aircraft to partner more closely with airlines and airports to figure this out. I think we're all convinced that AI is really the catalyst to make a positive transformation in the industry. And we also recognize that no single actor can really make a huge impact at scale. So it's when you have airports, aircraft, and authorities working together, sharing data, that you can really make this impact. In terms of AECOM, so this video that's playing in a loop, you might see that that's not an Airbus aircraft, so don't be surprised, it's not the wrong video. That is a Beach Baron, and we use that as our workhorse. So we're flying across the nation in the US, capturing imagery from different airports to build out AI flight functions. And so we look at AI-enabled products. So how can we build out products for the current product portfolio, but also for next generation aircraft? We look at AI-enabled manufacturing. So how can we bring in AI tools and also computer-based vision, things like that to increase the ramp up. So we're trying to get these airplanes out as fast as possible. There's a huge demand and a big backlog. AI can really help us do that. It can help with training, and it can also help with quality inspections and things like that. I would say last but not least, we're very invested in AI-enabled services. So with the advent of ubiquitous connectivity, this is really opening up a space to create new value generation, from ancillaries to more efficient operations. How can we do that? And then finally, I think Nick mentioned it, just creating this seamless end-to-end passenger journey. I think it's the thing that's been talked about in these types of FTEs and forums for a long time. But I think we're at a place where we can actually do that. And from our point of view, it's integrating AI across aircraft and airport systems that's going to unlock that. So AI is definitely already unlocking efficiencies and new value creation. But really, to gain full benefit of that is going to require creating a digital ecosystem that we don't yet have today.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne-Marie, how about you?
Sure, can I pass? How do I do the next one there? So I had some slides, but they're.
I didn't pull mine
Oh,
up.
wait, there we go. There we go.
There you go.
How do I get back on that? Yeah. Okay. Hello. My name is Anne-Marie Pellerin. I am managing partner at Llama Consulting. I have spent the better part of my life working at the intersection of new and emerging technologies and the regulatory environment. I spent many years with the Transportation Security Administration and want to talk to you a little bit today about kind of where I see the regulatory landscape moving. So I firmly believe that a mindset shift has set in with regulators kind of globally, but especially in the United States as of late. And one of the key impetuses for that has been the rapid acceleration of technology. So you have AI You also have new sensors and hardware that are being fielded. You have better digitalization in operational environments. And the question is, what do regulators do with all of that? And I think they have realized in recent years, and you're seeing this in the press, that resisting that change and or trying to keep it at bay while they write the requirements to keep everybody safe and secure is no longer really an option. What you have to do is actually embrace those private sector partners and figure out those solutions together. And so just to give you a very kind of concrete example of that, in the security realm, if you're a senior executive and you're sitting in the UK government or the US government or any government around the world, and you're trying to write aviation security regulation and you're trying to bring new detection technologies to bear in airports and aviation environments, traditionally you're looking at like an 8 to 10 year certification process for that equipment. And that doesn't even take into account research and development dollars that go in ahead of time. On the other side of the fence, and I saw a couple of demonstrations yesterday, you look at AI and AI platforms, and you think about adversaries who are trying to do bad things to aviation, which tomorrow is September 11th, right? When you think about that and you look online and you say, wow, the bad guys can just go into AI and put any explosive information or whatever they want and can come up with innovative new concepts. So where does that leave the regulator? We have kind of a process that we've always run that takes a very long time because we want to de-risk. But in the private sector and what's happening out in the world, things are moving incredibly fast. And so how do you adjust to that? How do you kind of identify where you're going to put the cursor, which goes to some of the trends that we're seeing? So I think if you saw recently in the United States, passengers can leave shoes on again. That's a positive change. You have European airports in the security domain who are using capabilities that will allow for high mass liquids to fly again. So we're removing some of these measures that have been put in place in airports in the past. You also have kind of the acceleration of incentive-based regulation. So let's not levy a mandate on someone. Let's create a structure so that if an airport moves forward in buying a new capability, maybe they have to do something less, and therefore there's a business case for buying and deploying that capability, so incentive-based regulation. The third piece is kind of the shift in passenger rights and greater accessibility for PRMs and others. How do we put the human more in the center and even leverage technologies to do that? And how do we make sure as an industry between the regulatory community and operators that we find the right balance that society will accept? The fourth piece is like digital identity and biometric regulation. This has been a push and pull over the years, as everyone has seen. I think in the last 2 years, you've seen this rapid acceleration of digital capabilities in airports because I think we're finally coming to some consensus in the private and public sectors around what's acceptable. And then finally, this international equivalency and harmonization efforts. People are realizing that to do things in a vacuum, given the pace and acceleration of change, is no longer an option. So what are some of the key risks that we see kind of going forward? Everybody wants to get the latest thing into an airport. And the regulators are responsible for making sure that we do that in a way that everybody is safe and secure. Everybody likes to roll their eyes at the regulators, but they have a really important job. They keep all of us safe and secure. But what are some of the key risks in that regulatory domain to, in some ways, kind of inhibit the change that's necessary? The first is privacy. There are always questions around that. There are even kind of vulnerabilities, either in cyber and even the AI models that are evolving. Over-regulation, like where are regulators operating where they don't need to be operating? I think regulatory authorities sometimes like to get excited about things and get involved in areas maybe sometimes where they don't need to be. And then a couple other key risks that are here, but just in general, I think that we're seeing a lot of change. That's very exciting, and we'll continue to see that related to direct aviation operations and even in urban air mobility and drones, which I don't have time to talk about right now. So over to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Just waiting for the slides to catch up. Hopefully there should be 2 slides in there. Right. Not too sure. Okay, well, we're going to move on anyway.
Oh,
here we go. Just caught up. Thanks very much for having me here today. It's really exciting to be here in Long Beach again and have the opportunity to chat with you and also be with my friends here talking about these sort of trends and factors, because ultimately the role I do within IAG is very much looking at the innovation that's out there and how can you transform our industry. So the question comes is, well, how do we do that? What's the starting point? And there's a number of different things. But I do think one of the key things is to try and put the customer at the front. So, what does the customer actually want? What are they seeing that they like? And there's a requirement as well for us to be able to share the art of the possible, because a lot of things that the customer may want, they don't know they want. So again, we need to share those things. So some of the things we see that definitely drive what we're looking at from an innovation point of view is seamless travel, personalization, and contactless. All those sort of elements. So your biometric travel, your use of the apps, the ability to go from one thing to another seamlessly. All of those sort of things are what the customer is now starting to expect. And unfortunately, as an industry, the airlines tend to, lag behind at times. So we need to be able to push that forward. And AI technology actually gives us a lot of opportunity to push that forward, because it can take a lot of the groundwork that's needed and crunch a lot of the information to be able to move that forward. I talk about the economic factors as well. Is a business. So we have to remember that. And there is a cost. The cost of flying people around the world is expensive. But we need to constantly be looking at how technology can help us to change that, because people have choices. We've seen since the numbers in 2019, pre-COVID, to what we're seeing now, where the passenger traffic is well above that. And it's it's going to continue to rise. And we need to be able to cope with that. So customers need that choice. Customers need that opportunity, and it is a challenge to do that. We heard Airbus, Boeing, they're both struggling to keep up with the orders, but we need to make best use of what we've got. Make sure that we're traveling to the right places. Make sure we're offering the options that the customers actually want. And then, lastly but not least, is ethical and sustainable aviation. I do believe that part of it is the whole sustainable aspect is something that customers are far more switched into now. So we need to make sure that we're not just talking about those global targets, we're actually delivering on them and exceeding them, because it's our planet. We've got to make sure it survives. Otherwise, this is not going to be a business that can survive. And we've seen companies that fail, and a lot of it is because they haven't thought of the things in the future that they need to do. And just some other bits and pieces I was going to say, IAG is made up of a number of airlines and ground handlers. And, we look at the areas that the group as a whole can influence our airlines, because each of the airlines has their own identity, they run their own business, but what we have from an innovation point of view is the opportunity to interact. So we have innovation teams that look at projects and look at working at joint activities. Each of our airlines has a different style, a different marketplace that they tend to be looking for. And each of these different aspects in that will come together. And it's interesting talking about the regulatory side of things. One of the key things we found some time ago was working with our own regulators in the UK, the CAA. We needed to do that at a very early stage. Rather than leaving it to once we decided that this is a great solution and we want to implement it, and then having to go through the regulatory loopholes, what we found is we bring that process forward to the very first part of the equation where we're thinking about it. Then that gives us the chance to start dealing with it, because the regulators, what they really want to do, the regulations are all about managing safety. And it's based on what the technology is when that regulation came out. So as that technology changes, there's the opportunity to change that regulation. So you need to be in a nice early stage. And we mentioned there about sustainability as well. We're talking about fleet renewal, a constant process of making sure we have those most efficient aircraft. SAF How do we manage to have that as a viable alternative fuel system? And green airports, so where we work together. Centering around all of this, though, is about how we work together and how we can use digital means to transfer information, because I think that is one of the critical parts that we miss. And I'm certainly very keen on, where aircraft are flying to an airport, that the aircraft is actually is the connector between the two. So how can we leverage data movement through that aircraft? Because that could well give us some greater opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose, round us out here.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Jose Salamo from the Toronto Pearson Airport. The joys of being last. Let's see if the slide deck comes up. Perfect. Green, right? There we go. So I'll start off with a bit of a Toronto Pearson-centric view. Before I dive into this slide, let me preface it with we're looking at the trends and what the future may hold from an IT perspective, really with our digital master plan. And our digital master plan has three main areas. It's focusing on what the airport will look like, how it's going to feel, and what the future has in hold. The second aspect of the digital master plan is how is data and technology going to impact and modify Toronto Pearson and all other airports. And last but not least, how are we going to implement that digital master plan while maintaining security, safety, and above all, safety is number one, pardon me, but also maintaining live operations. In some of the transformation that we're envisioning and that I'm going to get into, there's obviously the utmost care in making sure that in modernizing our systems that we're not doing that at the expense of the existing flows of passengers, aircraft, and bags. So what I've highlighted here is our LIFT program, which actually is denoted by the small triangles on the bottom of the slide. LIFT is an acronym for large infrastructure, long-term investments and terminals. Thank you. This is part of the issue we have with large airports, is that all the acronyms get jumbled around.
It's whatever you want it to be, Jose. You're the client.
Right answer. So the first of these large programs is the accelerator. And within the accelerator, there's actually going to be an interim terminal. That interim terminal will realize an expanded capacity of about 7 million passengers per year. And this facility, from an IT perspective, from an innovation perspective, from a technology perspective, we're viewing as our playground. We have a more or less greenfield environment that is going to be built. And not to say that we're going to throw all different new technologies at it. We will still have traditional check-in. We'll still have traditional baggage handling. But this is a space where we have an opportunity to trial out new processes, to trial out maybe enhanced AI to look at, is it still on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, sorry. Ears popped. And to see what we can do in this stage from 2026 to 2028 when this is being built. That then is going to feed into the Gateway project, which is a larger expansion of our Terminal 1 facilities, which is going to see about a 40% increase in capacity versus the existing Terminal 1 facility. So we want to take the lessons learned and the architecture that we're prototyping in Accelerator and use that hopefully as influence to leverage for the Gateway. And then rounding out at the top is obviously really far out into the future. We don't know what the trends are, or we're focusing on the trends, but we are very cognizant of the fact that there are going to be disruptors coming in probably in a perpendicular trajectory to ours and that are going to make us adjust course. And just before I advance, I'll go back to the beginning here. We're not just waiting for construction to commence for this. As part of our digital master plan, we also are delivering several lighthouse projects. So this is very much from a software perspective as a sprint, as a scrum, to go out from a human-centered design perspective, go out to the individual business units, have a frank conversation, see what their main pain points are, speak to the terminals group, speak to some of the passengers, and see what we can do. So right now, the lighthouses are internal, but we're hoping that these lighthouses, we're going to maintain that practice throughout this process. So a sub-part of our digital master plan is our technology stack, and the analogy to this is a restaurant. So very similar to it's actually a bottom-up approach in this diagram. We have the pantries, the raw materials that we have for the culinary experience. Everybody goes to a restaurant to obviously have some food, something different, something new. So all those raw materials are there, but there's no value add. So we have to go through that process to elevate those raw products, or in this case, the data, and take it through to the chefs and see what alchemy they can perform, transform that food, those raw elements into something useful, something unique. In our back office processes, that's really taking that data, that aggregate data, hopefully sharing it across multiple platforms, not just for one business unit, but for the total airport community, including the airlines, the service providers, and whoever would be a likely consumer of that. And obviously the top of that pyramid would be the passengers themselves. So that then rounds out to the digital products. So I won't go through the text on the left, but those are kind of our strategic pillars within the digital master plan, or sorry, within the technology stack. We also went through we've gone through an analysis with McKinsey, and I believe there are 6 or so journeys that we looked at. Those included the 3 main journeys, the passenger journey here that I'll speak to, the baggage journey, and the aircraft journey. And we expanded it beyond that and looked at our own internal processes to explore the construction journey, the maintenance journey, and one 6th journey. It'll come back to me in a second. Really, this is a very simple approach. It's taking a snapshot of where we are today, which is the top half of the slide, the from, which I'm certain everybody here can relate to. This is where we are from an airport perspective, looking at the journey kind of contained within the airport space, but also we do have elements here speaking about home to home, the entire journey, and what we can do to build out before or beyond our demarcation points. So that this is a snapshot of where we are today and where we're going to in the future. So we've incorporated these elements into our digital master plan and are asking ourselves, how could we, how can we, what would the future bring, and what is the best process that we could put in place for our passengers?
Excellent. Thank you, Jose. Thank you to everybody for sharing your perspectives. I'd love to start bringing all of this together and talk about how the entire ecosystem is going to start fitting together and maybe run through some additional questions with everybody. So looking at, we've got, all of you talked about leveraging newer technologies and a number of things that are emerging. One of the interesting things that I started to hear and see across all of your discussions was that translation of information from airline to the airport, to the customer, and what that looks like. So I'd love to start digging into that a little bit more. If we think about the customer perspective and the customer journey there, I'd love to know, is there a certain pain point that you feel like you could remove in the next year or so without some sort of crazy full terminal rebuild? Something. Let's talk something realistic here. So I'd love, Yvonne, maybe you start.
Sure, thank you, Nick. Realistically, we could remove the anxiety of uncertainty in the passenger journey, right? That's a lot of what the panel has touched on, what we need to do. It's through these emerging technologies that the esteemed panel has been mentioning that will knit together the aircraft, airport, and facility systems so that travelers and the workforce, I always want to add into the workforce because so many of us in the airports have tens, if not 100,000 employees that we also need to look after. So everyone would experience a seamless flow of real-time information where bags, gates, connections, and services are all visible, synchronized, and personalized. Instead of waiting, guessing, or worrying, the customer moves with confidence by an airport that speaks to both the aircraft and to them in one trusted voice.
Thank you. Sanskar, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
So one pain point I think we can try eliminating is to reduce wait times at TSA pre-lines. So you can use, like I said before, using AI to improve operational efficiency, seeing whether using people counting and then seeing how long the TSA pre-line, and sending more people there to improve their operational efficiency. And doing that same thing in a digital twin, creating a whole simulated environment to manage passenger flow. So when there's a bottleneck, you can see in a simulated environment what's happening and then guide them to the areas that are less wait times.
Okay. And Paige, what would you say is your perspective on removing a pain point there?
Well, I would say there's no lack of pain points.
For sure.
First of all. And so from our perspective, when you think of customer, you're thinking of an airline, right? And so in discussing with airlines, you get a sense of what are these common pain points. One really obvious one is in-flight catering. In-flight catering has no digital footprint today. It represents anywhere between 5 to 25% of operational costs for an airline, and it can be seen as a differentiator for airline and a way to attract more passengers. Yet, at the same time, it's a very complex process, complex logistics, and there's not a lot of transparency with data or really sharing of that process. If you look at IATA figures, I think 20% of catered foods remain unused after a given flight, and then they have to be incinerated. So that's a big waste there. For beverages, it's something like 60% of beverages remain unused, and so that's just extra waste, or weight rather, and then fuel consumption. So it seems like a no-brainer somehow to fix this issue. What we've done at EQ, because this has been a recurrent topic coming up time and time again, airlines have actually reached out and we've partnered to develop a software-only AI solution, very simple, that can be used on a cabin crew's smartphone, and it will just digitally track the onboard catering process so that it provides airlines with the insights so they can actually reduce their food waste and over-catering. So it's simple things like these that could really make an impact for the bottom line of our airlines and our customers.
So I think you've talked about before that there's a aircraft as a platform perspective. Do you feel like there's information that you can feed back to the airlines on this, but do you think there's information you could feed back to the airports that could help reduce misconnections or solve other problems out there?
100%. I mean, I think that goes back to trying to create more of a digital ecosystem where data is shared in a timely manner. I think that requires airlines and airports having a shared understanding of having situational awareness. From an aircraft perspective, an aircraft can share a lot of information. So we look at sharing an aircraft's intent. So can we share in real time the ETA, the estimated time of arrival at gate, the fuel status, things like that. Those are things that an aircraft can provide. And on the flip side, we also need information on ground handling, the state of passengers. Passenger information is also key. Who are these passengers? Where are they going? Have they checked bags? Are they flexible? Should there be disruptions? And so having that data and sharing both passenger-related state and aircraft intent would go a long way in starting to build out AI, more predictive capabilities that would allow us to minimize the pain on passengers in irregular operation situations.
So Sanskar, do you think that some of the capabilities that NVIDIA can offer from an AI perspective, creating digital twins, can help enable some of that flexibility or enable some of those things that Paige is bringing up to kind of come to fruition?
So like using digital twins, you have like the whole environment. You can manage what's happening in real time. So whether it's like, I'll take the example for like energy. So airports use a lot of energy, so you want to make sure that your energy is being distributed properly around the whole airport. So using digital twins, you can see how if there's any inefficiencies, diagnose any faults. So, and then another thing is that airports do have a lot of data, and enterprises, they get competitive advantage when they can turn their data into insights. So like as Paige said, so you want to go from like a reactive operation to a proactive operation. So reactive meaning waiting for something to happen, but then proactive meaning based on the amount of data that you have, you can know what's going to happen. So like say for example, like I'll take it like Christmas for example, like you know that it's a travel holiday, so you know that more people are going to come. So then using a digital twins and AI, you know they have to put more personnel there, so you can improve the safety and safety for the passengers as well.
Well, it's a great segue to thinking about safety and redesigning airports to accommodate things like that. And if you have those digital twins, would that be more helpful to kind of manage and flex those spaces? So Yvonne, if you think about things like walk-through screening, smarter TSA checkpoints, what's that first kind of point of design flexibility you'd think about to try to help future-proof?
So I would say that we being my esteemed SoCal team here in the front row, if anyone wants to talk to them after, raise your hands after our panel is done. But one of the things that we really focus on the first bit of design flexibility is we've introduced the reconfigurable high-value space around the checkpoint zone. These are some of the most visible and valuable spaces in the entire terminal, and historically they've been locked in the solid function of security. So by designing with that adaptive infrastructure, so the power, the data, the HVAC, and the lighting, we get the clear sight lines, and we can future-proof them as to transform as technology evolves. So when the screening footprints contract, those square feet or meters won't sit idle. We can quickly pivot into a new dwell and revenue opportunities, pop-up retail, food, beverage, wellness, or premium services, again, knowing what the customer wants, right, and the airlines that we're working with and really catering to that customer. They can be programmed for any other customer-centric amenity, whether it's a quiet zone for business travelers or cultural showcase to reflect the region identity. We can also leverage that freed up circulation to improve the passenger flow, including right-sized connections into hold rooms, direct sightlines to concessions, again, looking at the return on investment for the airport and the revenue generation that's possible, and also with the integration of advanced wayfinding and digital entertainment zones.
Cool. So Paige, Sanskar, and Yvonne have talked about ways in which they could enable the capture and creation of data in some ways. I'm curious, Anne-Marie, Keith, Jose, if you had access to more of that data, is there like a single data point that the three of you would love to see that you feel like would help allow you to better improve a customer journey, be able to more seamlessly enable kind of that discussion between the airlines, airports, and regulators? Love to open it up to the three of you and get your perspective. If there's something that would be immensely helpful that maybe our three folks here could help you kind of capture. Anne-Marie, maybe start with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's data, but there's also technology solutions that you asked earlier. What are the pain points that you would solve, and which technologies would you deploy? I could name 5 technologies that are very mature that could be dropped into airports today and solve a number of pain points. But I always like to say it's 20% technology and 80% people, process, and politics. And so, I think one of the key things that we can't forget as a community is the people, human, political, regulatory environment is tough. It's hard. Procurement processes are tough. They're really hard, not just in aviation and government as well. And so there are all of these things that are less sexy to talk about, but are really hindering us from kind of moving forward. And then we talk about technology all the time, but what about people? So we always talk about the human factor vis-a-vis technology and how people interact with technology, but that's not the only human factor in all of this. So how do we adopt technologies in a complex operating domain? How do we empower the workforce with some of these technologies and make it worth their while to pick it up? How do we also work with like internal procurement divisions and legal departments to think through the level of risk that they're willing to consume? And so I think that's a really critical element in the discussion to talk about, because again, you know, many of these technologies are very, very mature and they're ready. They've been ready for 10 years, but you know, how do we actually operationalize them?
Great point. Keith, how about you?
Yeah, and certainly to the question you raised there, is there a single data point? I'd say the answer is no. There are so many data points to make something happen that we need. And I'll give you an example. You know, I can't imagine there's anybody in the room that's probably not suffered the situation where you get on your plane, you have a nice flight, it comes all the way through your destination, you're early onto the gate. You get to the gate there, everybody, you know, the seatbelt sign goes off, everybody stands up and does their thing to try to get stuff out, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait, because there's a jet bridge that needs to attach to the aircraft, and it's not attached. Well, I've got some great news for you. We're testing and we're using automated and remote-driven jet bridges now that can connect to the aircraft. But you know, to do that, there's several steps before that have to happen. And we need to have all of those things start joining up. And it could be that the airline operate part of that technology, the ground handler may be operating part of that technology, other suppliers could be, and then you've got the airport itself that could be operating part of that. And then you've got the whole picture of, well, what happened on the flight before? Because when they finished that arrival or that flight before and the plane departed, did they put everything back where it should be? Because if it's not, you can't bring the aircraft onto the stand. So it becomes this really complicated jigsaw. But what I say is that we are pushing those sort of boundaries at the moment to test each of those different elements of technology, but bring them together. Because although you know, one company can create a jet bridge, brilliant, but they're not necessarily the people going to do the stand guidance system. So we need to make sure those two technologies talk to each other. And all of those data feeds are what drives it, because we need that intelligence in the background to, one, learn how our operation actually works with real objective data, and then we need to apply it to how we're going to work it in the future and how we're going to work it with our people. You know, and you say about the human element, it's absolutely key, because again, you know, it's often talked about the fact that we bring in technology, it reduces the need for people. It reduces the need for people in that area. But if you think about the increase in passengers that are happening out there, you know, if I was to cut down the workforce in an airport from 20,000 to 10,000, I need to double it again to cover the extra flights that are going to be flown, because actually there's so much more demand coming out there. So you still will have people involved in that operation. They'll still be doing different things, but it will be different. It will be different parts of the operation. And the key area is facing the public, so somebody can talk to a human, because that still is a very valuable commodity. So answer to your question is loads of data points, please. I want to join the dots to know my operation.
Excellent. Jose, how about you? What are you looking for? What would make you happy?
Well, I think I'll start by echoing 100% agree. Technology does not solve people and process issues. Throwing technologies at problems without a definitive goal in mind, without metrics for success, is just throwing bad money out. Also agree with you, Keith. So I think the flow is different, the flow is continuing. But I don't have a single data point. I think holistically, as the enablers within Toronto Pearson, as the IT department, our wish would be for more live data. There's control rooms in Tesla tunnels, as we saw on Monday with the innovation group, still operate on this premise of red light. To your point, Keith, there isn't necessarily that level of prediction or of that asset being left in a good state for when it will be utilized next. So I think really what we're looking for, what we'd love to have is more tangible live data and moving away from these silos, from individual business units, to being able to share data across platforms and across different consumers, so that we can get the operations base stable. We can maintain operations from a baggage perspective and from a plane perspective, so that the passenger experience, to your point, when you stand up at the end of that flight, yes, you hit that boarding bridge comes and connects, the chocks are put down, the GPU and the conditioned air units are connected, and you can deboard and have that fast turnaround. And there are lots of additional aspects, really. I mean, predictive resource allocation, focusing on reducing bottlenecks, tailoring services dynamically across all the main flows, really ultimately leading to a smoother operation. That's I think the goal, and that's from a digital perspective. That's I think the goal.
Excellent. Well, we're having an incredibly rich conversation that I really appreciate, guys. I'd love to jump and start thinking about looking a little bit to the future, maybe jump ahead a little bit. Maybe get a perspective from each of you. You know, is there one key focal point you feel as though is most important for this industry for the next 5 to 10 years? Is there something that you can maybe try to pinpoint that you think is the most important thing for you or your organization to look at, or maybe it's the most important area to kind of push regulators on? And so with that, Maria, I'd love to have you start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's rapid testing, iteration, and human feedback on what we're doing. And I think regulators have a responsibility to facilitate that and help make it real. And so the way to do that is to consume, in the near term, some level of risk for the benefit of long-term risk mitigation, right? So if you say, oh, it's going to be really hard for us to agree to a pilot with that technology because God forbid some bad guy comes through and does something, that mindset puts us in a place 10 years out where we still haven't deployed it. And in those 10 years, maybe we're consuming a bunch of risk because we don't have a better long-term capability in play. So I think thinking through what is the long-term objective and what's the long-term risk profile, and how do regulatory authorities help accelerate the fielding of equipment, quick feedback loops, and really focus on the human element, because as we've talked about, if the human's not going to use it in the right way and not going to benefit from it, it's not going to work.
Keith, how about you? What would you be your perspective?
From my side, I would say that a key area for me is objective data that is accurate, and having that to build our actual strategies and priorities for the future. Because traditionally we've worked on data which is not. And if you're going to apply AI technology to data, it has to be accurate. Because if not, all you're doing is multiplying the errors. And that's where we start to get into problems. So, you know, I would challenge anybody with any data streams that they have is how accurate is it? How are you ensuring the accuracy? A key area that I've worked with is timestamping technology. And it's great using video analytics to identify when something starts and finishes. But then you go between different suppliers of the technology and you may get a different interpretation. So all of a sudden your data, which you felt was objective, starts to become slightly less objective because it's based on what that company has set up. So you then have to make sure that you're translating it into a common language. So it's just, data is key to it all, but it's got to be accurate.
100%. Jose, what would your perspective be for the next 5 to 10 years?
We don't know what the future is going to bring. I think the focus really is going to be on ensuring that data accuracy, that data is shareable, it is in that common language. I think that's really a non-problem today, I think, with AI. That's the easiest application for AI, is to take it from one format to another. So those translation layer issues, I think, are really disappearing. But for the next 10 years, I think really is maintaining that adaptability. Had a conversation just before this session about future-proof, and we can never be future-proof, But if we have this plan and anticipate what may happen, that we recognize that there is uncertainty, and we follow a trend, great. And as I think, as I said earlier, yes, we are going to have those disruptors coming in at a perpendicular path. But if our infrastructure is built on a solid foundation and modular, maybe we can start building today for digital twin. Digital twin here, I don't know if there are about 100 or so people. Maybe there are 120 interpretations of what a digital twin is. Individual business units within an airport have different needs and expectations from that. Passengers would have a different expectation from that. Airlines would have, every service provider, everyone who touches an airport or has an interaction with an airport would have a different need for that. So how do we build that? I don't think there's, I would hope there isn't a group that thinks that they can come into an airport or into the industry and deliver this top to bottom and it will meet the industry requirements. I believe that it needs to be built up in modules so that the data can be audited, passed on to multiple consumers, and then leveraged for wayfinding, for maintenance applications, for improving flows, for passenger wait time monitoring and dynamic allocation of resources.
I'd love to quickly get the perspective from the three folks that maybe can enable some of this data to be captured and collected. On a page, do you have any thoughts on maybe responding to some of the perspectives from folks or your focal point for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think quickly to conclude, it goes back to my earlier point. I think digital integration across airport, aircraft, and passenger systems is really the way to go to be able to unlock seamless journeys. And I want to also insist that digital integration needs to be as open and as standardized as possible. I think there's great work that's being done right now between some airlines and some airports, and that's really leading the way. But at the end of the day, we're catering to all types of platforms, aircraft, lots of different airports. So we would need to look at this digital ecosystem in as open a way as possible to really reap the benefits.
Sanskar, how about you?
Yeah, so I want two things. So airports have a lot of data. So in the future, finding a way of how you can unlock that data, whether that's for like competitive advantage, so like flight metrics, passenger experience. So seeing which areas, which days you're getting more flights coming in. And then also creating like AI working groups within your airports or airlines to constantly educate your IT department or engineers about how to use AI, so when it's actually deployed, they know how to use it effectively and safely in the future.
Yvonne, how about you wrap us up?
Okay, so again, thank you all for being here, and I'll wrap this up as quick as possible and say that really the future of air travel is about airports that think and evolve like ecosystems, right? It's a term that we use a lot in the industry, but it's kind of flipped a bit because in the past, what we've seen over the last 50, 60 years in aviation infrastructure is things grew organically because it was a very reactive response to demand and need, right? And so now we're trying to retrofit and improve all of these. But going forward, including with our green and brownfield sites, what we as architects and engineers and with our whole collective industry need to focus on is really harnessing that data and technology to achieve our combined vision.
Excellent. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you very much, everybody. Really enjoyed hearing all of your perspectives. I hope all of you did as well. I'd love for you to help me celebrate all of you and give you a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us.